Alright, I'm back again with another contemporary math lesson. This lesson is for section 4D, loan payments, credit cards, and mortgages. These are all instances when you owe someone else money. We will talk about the vocabulary, we will talk about a formula or two. We will go through pretty much everything financially related, mathematically related to a mortgage, more than you probably ever wanted to know. But you'll be able to take that with you and use it in the real world if you don't already know how mortgages work. So let's begin. We have some vocabulary right off the bat here at the top underneath our one. We have the principal being the amount of money owed at any particular time. So I've been paying on my mortgage for 2 years and 3 months now. The current amount I owe is now called the principal. When it first started, the amount I owed 2.5 years ago was called the principal. So the principal changes with a loan. The next one, an installment loan or amortized loan, is a loan that is paid off with equal regular payments. We've heard that phrase, equal regular payments. This will be an annuity. The loan term is the time you have to pay the loan back in full. Now you may be surprised to hear this. If you don't know anything about mortgages, the most common length of a term for a mortgage is 30 years. 30 years you are paying off your house. Car loans back in the day, I'm talking like late 90s, early 2000s, the longest you could have a car loan for, the longest term would have been 5 years. They usually say 60 months. Well, now it has so slowly crept up into 72 months, which would be 6 years. I've seen them for 84 months, which is 7 years. So they're trying to lengthen the terms of the loans. So the loan payment formula for installment loans is here. Now again, like with the savings plan formula, there's still a lot of pretty similar feeling stuff here, like this 1 plus APR over n to the ny power. But then you have to be careful here with when you're trying to find the payment for a loan, the sign of the exponent is negative, so you want to be watching out for that. There's a negative sign up there. And we have the return of P in our equation. So now we have a principal and a payment. This fraction, right? This fraction shows up twice. Let me use a different color. This fraction shows up twice, again, just like the savings account we were looking at. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much the same, right? We have the payment, we have the principal, which is the starting loan amount, we have an APR, we have the number of payment periods per year, the number of compoundings, if you will, and the number of years. So let's look at an example. I'm going to scoot this up as high as I can so we can still see the formula there. So example 1, Steve borrowed $15,000 to buy some land at an APR of 9%, which he is paying off with a monthly payment of $190 for 10 years. So the first thing we're going to do is just apply these vocabularies the vocabulary words right to this scenario. We're going to identify the amount borrowed, the annual interest rate, the number of payments per year, the loan term, and the payment amount. So I'm going to put that information on the screen just like that. And we've answered part A. So part B is asking a question that doesn't have anything to do with this formula yet. Well, I guess it kind of does, and I'll explain where it comes into play here in a moment. Part B is asking, how many total payments does the loan require? So that's the first part. How many payments would we be making? Well, or would Steve be making? Steve would be making 12 payments per year for 10 years. So to figure that out, we just have to multiply 12 payments per year times 10 years. And look at that. Our fraction's coming back. The years cancel, leaving us with 120 payments. Then the next question is asking, what is the total amount paid over the full term of the loan? Well, Steve is making 120 payments. Each payment is $190. I bet we could just multiply those two things together and get $22,800 in total. Okay, so let's take it one step further. We can ask this last question down here for part C. Of the total amount paid, what percentage is paid toward the principal and what percentage is paid toward the interest? Well, all we have to do to figure this out is first we have to figure out how much interest was paid. So the amount of interest that was paid was the total amount. So interest paid is the total minus the principal, which would be 22,800 minus 15,000, which would give you a whopping $7,800. So that's how much interest was paid. The question is, what percentage of the entire total paid was interest? So if we want a percent, we just take the interest and divide it by the total. Multiply by 100. So that is 7,800 divided by 22,800, and then we will multiply that by 100 to get 34.21%. And if you want to know how much, what percentage of the principal, you would just take the principal and divide it by the total and multiply by 100. And that would give you 65.79%. If we're going out to 2 decimal places, you'll want to just make sure that you go to as many decimal places as is being asked. So now that we are on the next slide, away from the formula, we have an example here that uses the formula. All right, so it says, suppose you are a student having loans totaling $7,500 when you graduate from college. I hope you all are so lucky to have this small amount of debt when you graduate from college. The interest rate is APR equals 9%, and the loan term is 10 years. What are your monthly payments? How much will you pay over the lifetime of the loan? And what is the total interest you will pay on the loan? That is 3 different questions. Let's do the first one first. What is your monthly payment if you have a principal of $7,500, an APR of 9%, and a loan term that is 10 years with monthly payments? So here is all of the information that the example gives us that's specific, and here is the formula that we are supposed to use to figure out the payment for a loan. So then all we have to do is substitute in these values, for the correct letters, or the correct variables over here in the equation, and we'll get an equation that looks something like this. So these numbers are all color-coded with the underlines over here. All right, so then just like when we were working with the savings accounts, the IRAs, all that stuff, you want to figure out what this would be, because that's going to show up twice in our equation. And in this case, this will be equal to 0.0075. And this fraction will equal the same thing clearly, 0.0075. Then you want to multiply the exponent together, and this is a negative 12 times 10, and that will give you a negative 120. And so with all of those simplifications, the fraction will start looking simpler as well. So here we have these simplifications, and in this case, for this particular formula, you can figure out the top all by itself and the bottom separately. So when you multiply 7,500 times 0.0075, you'll get 56.25. And when you simplify everything in the bottom here, you will absolutely want to figure out this piece first and then take it away from 1. So that number would be 0.592062,695. And I'm going out a bunch of decimal places just to make sure I can get the most accurate answer. This number in the numerator, that stopped after 0.25. It was 56.25. Stopped. It wasn't 56.256392639. It wasn't like that. It was just 0.25. So after you make that division, you'll see that the payment is equal to $95, yep, and 1 cent per month. That seems doable. So that's just what are the monthly payments. Let me see if I can do this here. Nope. All right. So that's $95.01 per month. So what's the next question asking? How much will you pay over the lifetime of the loan? Well, there will be 120 payments because we're paying the loan off over 10 years each month. So 10 years worth of months is 120 months. So the total paid, let's see, total paid would be $95.01 times 120. Which is equal to a grand total of $11,401.20, which is a little bit more than you borrowed. I gather that, but also your education should be bringing you some more money in. Lastly, how much interest did you pay on the loan? You just have to take your principal away from the total. So this is going to be subtracted. This is the total paid here. Subtract 7,500 to get a total amount of interest. That would be $3,901.20. So there is your interest. Now, how does this all work? I guess you could have just looked down here a little bit to see what the payment was going to be. So you can see here that the payment every single month was going to be $95.01. So I'm glad my math was good. The interest rate you can see here is the 0.0075. That is exactly what we got. You can still see it barely when we divided these two numbers here. This is the monthly interest rate. So you can see the first few payments that are being made. We already know is going to be $95.01. How do you figure out how much interest will be paid? Well, you take the monthly interest rate times the principal, and this amount is how much is being paid for interest. So when you look at this, you make your $95 payment, $56.25 of that goes to interest the first month. That was also right over in this area, somewhere over here, $56.25. 7,500 times that 0.0075. Yeah. So you're only paying off $38.76 on your first payment. Less than half of your first payment goes to paying off your loan. So what happens? That amount that was left over, we subtract it from the principal, we get this new amount here, and we start all over again. Month 2, how much do you owe? Well, it's this much now, times the monthly interest. You can see that you're not paying as much interest as you were last month, which is good. But here we go, you're still paying less than half of your payment toward your principal. And we subtract that amount from the principal, and we do it again. And we do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. This is what we would call an amortization table if it were all the way done out to month number 120. There are plenty of websites, if you just search amortization table, that will show you exactly how every penny of your payments for whatever type of loan you have, where every single penny of that payment is going, either to interest or to principal. So let's see what this is down here. Principal and interest with installment loans. So the portions of installment loans going toward the principal and toward the interest vary as the loan is being paid down. Early in the term loan, the portion going toward interest is relatively high, and the portion going toward the principal is relatively low, as I mentioned over here. But as the term proceeds, the portion going toward interest gradually decreases. You can see that the interest amount is going down, and the portion going toward principal gradually increases. This number is going up. And that'll be the case with all loans. So just keep that in mind for when you get a loan of any type. And I went and looked it up really quickly. For the mortgage that I currently have, and this is probably the case for most people who have a home mortgage, it will take well over 50% of the time, 50% of the term, to pay off 50% of the house. So I just looked at mine, and I won't have 50% of my house principal paid down, 50% of the original house principal, until I am 19 years and 3 months into my 30-year mortgage. So enough about that. Let us continue on to part 2 down here, credit cards. So credit cards differ from installment loans in that you are not required to pay off the balance in any set period of time. But here are some things that you might not have known about credit cards that make up for the fact that you don't have to pay off your balance in any set period of time. A minimum monthly payment. There's a minimum monthly payment that you have to make every single month. And it could change. If you have a large balance on your credit card, then your minimum monthly payment would be bigger than if you had a small balance on your credit card. So, about that minimum monthly payment, the minimum covers all of the monthly interest and a small amount of the principal. A minimum payment will not pay off your credit card very quickly because it's only covering this small amount of principal. And lastly, as I just said, it takes a long time to pay off a card if you only make minimum payments. So you are definitely almost always wanting to pay more than the minimum amount. So let's take a look at another example. Here we have example 3. Suppose you have a credit card balance of $2,300 with an annual interest rate of 21%. And if you hear that, an annual interest rate of 21%, and you say, man, that's high, that's not too far off from reality. So if that shocks you, maybe that'll shock you into not getting a credit card for a little while longer. You decide to pay off your balance over 1 year. How much do you need to pay each month? Assume you will make no further credit card purchases. We can treat this scenario as an installment loan, as if we were trying to find a payment using the formula from the previous page or the previous section. So I'm going to take the time to write everything out. We have we have P. We don't have an A here. We have P. We have payment. We have APR. We have an N, and we have a Y. So the principal here is $2,300. The payment we're trying to figure out, the APR is 0.21, and that is a big interest rate. It will be monthly, and we are going to pay the card off within 1 year. I don't know, take a few seconds, work out in your head, what do you think the payments will be for this venture? I don't know. I have a feeling they're going to be around $300, and maybe not. I don't know. I feel like $300 feels right. Let's see how I do. Let's see. So we're going to get the formula up here. There you go. You're going to substitute all of the numbers into this formula. I get to say things like this exponent, we're supposed to have negative 12 times 1, but that's just negative 12. I get to say things like this right here equals 0.0175, and so would this fraction. So the next step here would be, let's say, the next step here would be 2,300 times 0.0175, and in the denominator we have 1 minus 1.0175 to the 12th power. So again, I would need to, we can simplify the top. That's no problem. It's just a quick multiplication. But then simplifying the bottom, which I realize there should be a negative here for the exponent. You want to figure out this base and exponent first and then subtract it away from 1. So that entire fraction will turn into something that looks like this. And then we can just divide these two numbers and get, I think it was $214.16. So I was way off. I thought it was going to cost a lot more than that. So just very quickly again, if you make 12 payments of $214.16, you'll end up paying, and I'm just gonna write it here. You'll end up paying $2,569.92. So that's $269 more than what you started with up here. I thought it was going to be a lot more than that. I guess the term being so short is what tricked me into it. I'm used to thinking about longer term loans, like car loans, 5 years, 6 years, mortgages. Mortgages can be as low as 20 years. We're going to talk about all that coming up right now. So, why don't I scoot this up and just inundate you with information? There's going to be a lot of information just sort of pop up on the screen here in 3, 2, 1. So here's a lot of things you should know about mortgages when you decide to buy a house at any point in time. One of the things, I guess 6 of the things you would like to do, you should do. First one, you want to strengthen your credit score, pay down your credit cards if you have high balances. You want to make sure all bills are paid on time. I don't know if you all know this, but utility bills count toward your credit score. So you want to make sure that you are paying all of your bills on time. That will help your credit score. Once you get that straightened out, you want to figure out what you can afford. Oftentimes, many people are surprised to know that they can afford a house, instead of an apartment. So figure out what your monthly payment could be for a house. And I'm going to skip down here because there's a lot more that goes into a house payment than just more interest and principal payments. When you consider all costs of a house, that includes paying taxes on a house, or repairs that you have to make on a house, or the insurance, home insurance policy that you'll have to have on a house. All of those things factor into what you can afford. But it's still true that you can probably get a house for about the cost, the monthly payment of an apartment. Again, a lot of people are very surprised to hear that as well. So once you get those 2 things going, you want to save for down payment and closing costs. Closing costs are the cost of doing business, basically. To have the realtor fill out paperwork, to have lawyer draw things up, to get your land survey, there are so many little nickel and dime fees and closing costs, but they add up real quick. You want to have a healthy savings account before you buy a house. You want to make sure you have about 3 to 6 months worth of monthly bills and groceries, and you want to account for all of that. All of your bills for 3 to 6 months, you want to have that amount saved, just in case. You want to get pre-approved for a mortgage. Normally, if you have a good relationship with the bank you're working for or working with, where your accounts are, they will, they know your history. They can get you a mortgage, but the bank down the road might give you a better interest rate. So you have to shop around when you're doing this, getting pre-approved for a mortgage. And last thing, at least in the red ink, buy a house that you like. If you buy a house and you don't like it, you are going to be miserable. I've mentioned already, mortgages have terms that are up to 30 years. You don't want to get into a house and 3 years later say you hate it. So make sure it's a house you like. Other thoughts, you want a good realtor. You can go online and educate yourself about good realtor. You can ask friends who their realtor was. You want to hire your own home inspector. You don't want to have the person you're buying the house from say, "Oh yeah, I know a guy. I'll get the home inspection," because the other guy could just sign off and say, "Yeah, yeah, this house is, perfect in perfect condition," when really the plumbing needs to be fixed, and then you could have a lot of repairs in the future. You want to consider, we talked about this, all the costs. You want to know, I mean, figure it out. Do you want to get a fixer-upper or a move-in ready house? And then you want to demand the full disclosure. And there's a seller's disclosure that you can ask for. And it basically tells you everything that is wrong with the house, at least to the seller's knowledge, which can or cannot be truthful. But I've been through 2 house selling processes, and I haven't lied on anyone that I've done, but other people are not as honest. So just make sure you get the full disclosure. We will end with this paragraph of information here. So here we go. A mortgage is a long-term installment loan for the purpose of financing a home where the property is pledged as security. The down payment is the amount of money that you must pay to the seller before the lender will grant the mortgage. Additional upfront costs are called closing costs and may include fees for things such as an appraisal or credit check, as well as points. Points are prepaid interest by the buyer that may be used to reduce the interest rate. 1 point is equal to 1% of the loan amount. For a fixed rate mortgage, your monthly payment will remain the same for the duration of the loan. For a variable rate mortgage, I don't think this will shock anybody, your monthly payment may change as interest rates in the market change. An amortization table schedule is a document that contains the payment number, the amount applied to the interest and principal, and the balance of the loan. And I've already talked about amortization tables. One other thing, when you buy a house and get a mortgage, I've always been told that fixed rates are better than variable rates. So just keep that in mind. You can ask your realtor when that happens what their opinion is, as they are in that market a lot more than me. Well, let's move on. All right, here we go with yet another example. And in this example, we get to go deep, 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 deep into everything that involves a mortgage, including, let's see here, we have a principal, we have a 20% down payment, we have points, we have additional closing costs, and we're just going to dive into all of this. So the first thing that we are going to be asked here is to find the required down payment. So the down payment, I can talk about this for a second. The bank requires a 20% down payment. Now, most of the time, the 20% down payment is used to avoid also charging you what is known as private mortgage insurance. And that basically covers you so that if you don't make your house payments, or you go into default on your mortgage, this insurance covers you and will pay the bank. It more so covers the bank, but it covers you and it'll pay the bank the rest of the mortgage amount that you owe. If you make a down payment that is less than 20%, then you will have to pay for mortgage insurance. If you make a down payment that is 20% or more, then you can avoid private mortgage insurance. All right. So that being said, all we have to do in order to find the required down payment is multiply the price of the house, which is $200,000, times 20% as a decimal. And you'll get that the down payment is a lot of money. So Another note about this is that there are mortgages that do not require 20% down payment. There are mortgages that will go as little as 3.5% down payment. And just for this example, a 3.5% down payment would only be $7,000, which is something more people have ready to purchase a house with. So this would be 3.5% down payment. And those are called VFA or VHA, FHA. Those are called FHA loans. And that's what a lot of people end up going with. All right, so moving on with the example. So we found out how much the down payment was. The question then becomes, find the amount of the mortgage. Well, if the price of the home is $200,000 and you have only $40,000 right now, how much will you have to borrow from the bank? It's pretty simple. So you take your price minus the down payment. Oops, 40,000. There we go. And you get $160,000 for a mortgage. Again, pretty straightforward. The next question is, how much must be paid for the 2 points at closing? From the previous slide, you can remember that a point is equal to 1% of the mortgage amount. So since we will have 2 points, this will be 2% of the mortgage amount, not the price, not the $200,000, the mortgage amount. So we will take 2% of the mortgage amount, and that will give us, let's see, 0.02 times $160,000 is $3,200. Nice. Okay, so the next question is, let me circle that. There we go. The next question is, including the down payment, what are your total costs to get the mortgage? Well, we have the down payment that we figured out way back here, $40,000. We have the points that we are going to pay for our mortgage, $3,200. And way back here, this sentence that I read and have not come back to yet, there are $800 in additional closing costs. So that counts too. So we have 40,000, we have 33,200, and we have 800. When you add up all of these numbers together, you will get that the total amount here to get the mortgage will be $44,000. And again, a lot of people just don't have $44,000 sitting around. So you always want to be saving money or trying to find better loan options like an FHA loan. All right. So the mortgage amount is still going to be $160,000, and I'm going to scroll up a little bit because we have to use the payment formula. I guess you can find a loan calculator online to use. You can probably just find Google loan payment calculator, and we're going to find the monthly payment excluding escrowed taxes and insurance. So let's see here. I'm going to move it up about that far. All right. So I'm going to list everything that I know about this particular scenario. So here's everything about the scenario that we need to figure out a payment. Next step, I'm going to write out the formula, and I'm not going to leave the variables in there. I will absolutely fill in all of these numbers into the correct place. So that'll look like this. So here's the formula with everything in place. And again, you would go through and simplify this fraction and consequently this fraction. as 0.00033333333, as many as you can stand to write. Again, the more decimal places, the more accurate. So there it is, and then you would simplify this to be negative 360 for the exponent. And when you calculate this entire fraction, you'll see that the payment should just be, where did it go? $763.86. And so this is what I was saying earlier in the video. You'd be surprised at how much it costs, like a house costs. The principal and interest is only $763 per month. That's less than the cost of an apartment, as far as I know. But with a house, if with some apartments you have all bills paid, and this doesn't seem like a better deal, because with a house you'll have to pay for your electricity, you'll have to pay for your gas bill, you'll have to pay for sewage and trash pickup and all these things, and then you have taxes to pay, and then you have insurance to pay. That isn't even private mortgage insurance. It is just home insurance to make sure if your house burns down, you're not out $200,000 to a bank. So you can probably safely say that after you escrow, which means add taxes and insurance into your payment, that it'll be probably closer to $1,300 per month. That is just an estimate. So let's continue. Find the total costs of interest over 30 years. Oh my goodness. All right. So how would we do that? We would have to figure out how much you paid for the house over 30 years. So that means you would take this amount, multiply it by 12 months per year, and then multiply that by another 30 because you're doing it for 30 years. So 763.86 times 12 times 30 is $274,989.60. So that's total. To find out how much interest you paid over that amount, you would subtract away the mortgage, or the original principal, and you would get that you paid $114,000, 989 more dollars and 60 cents. It's basically $115,000. And what this really amounts to is you borrowed $160,000 from a bank, and basically at the end of 30 years you say, okay, bank, thanks a lot, I repaid you everything you let me borrow plus another $115,000 about. And this just amounts to a great big $115,000 thank you for letting me borrow the money that I didn't have, bank. So banks are not hurting because they can make lots of money on people. All right. Next would be how much of your first payment will be applied to your mortgage or the loan balance. Well, the only thing you need to do in order to figure this out is take the monthly interest rate. So the monthly interest rate is the 0.04 APR divided by 12. So we would take the monthly interest rate and multiply by the original principal, right? If you haven't made a payment yet, your principal is $160,000. And multiplying the principal by the monthly interest will tell you the interest you pay for the first month, which ends up being $533.33. So this is the first month of interest. Your first and every payment will be $763.86, which was up there. I don't know if you can see it anymore, barely. And then to find out how much goes toward your mortgage, we would take away that first month's worth of interest, which ends up being $230.53. So not very much of your first payment is going toward your mortgage. And lastly, down here at the bottom, we have these two scenarios that are meant for you to look at and just think for a few seconds. What happens if you pay extra money each month above your original payment? So if you pay $100 extra each month, that means we would add $100 to this amount here, which we figured out way back here. So it would be $863.86 per month. If you went through and found out how much the new total would be, since you are paying more per month, that means more will go toward your principal each month, which means at the end you would be paying less than what you did here. So if we paid this much per month, the new total would be $249,000, $249,391.32, which would mean your new term is 24 years and 1 month. Thereby saving you this much time. You can just take 24 years and 1 month away from 30 years and get this here. And it would save you this much money in interest. And again, you can figure out this value by subtracting the new total from the old total. And then there's something very similar here going on for if you are able to pay $200 each month. It turns out you end up saving about almost $42,000 in interest and almost 10 years on your mortgage. So it really speaks to the fact that if you can afford it, you should pay some extra on your principal each month. Even if it's as little as $100 each month, you'll save almost 6 years on your mortgage and about $26,000. Last slide. Thank you for hanging in there. This video is still long. So example 5, Great Bank offers a $100,000 30-year 5% fixed rate loan with a closing cost of $500 plus 1 point. Big Bank offers a lower 4.75% rate on a 30-year loan, but with Big Bank, closing costs are $1,000 plus 2 points. Evaluate these options. So I've gone ahead and calculated the payments using the loan payment formula from at the beginning of this video, or whenever we went over it. This video is so long I forgot. To find the payment you'll have with the Great Bank, $536.82. As opposed to Big Bank, your payment would be $521.65. So the conclusion here is just based on payment alone, you will pay about $15 less per month with Big Bank. And that's good. Over the long run, I think this will save a lot of money. Because if you can save $15 per month, and you're going to do that for 30 years, you'd have we'd have 12 months a year, and that would be for 30 years. That means in the long run, you would save $5,400 just by picking Big Bank over Great Bank. And that's just in the payments, of course. However, we have more information here. So the closing costs here for Great Bank are $500 plus 1 point. The closing costs for big bank are $1,000 plus 2 points. So let's see how that'll look. That means we have a closing for Great Bank is how much? It's 500 plus 1,000. Remember, 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. So 1% of $100,000 is $1,000. The closing costs for Big Bank are $1,000 plus 2 points, which would make it $2,000. So here, total closing would equal $3,000. So what do you pick? Do you pick Big Bank with their smaller payments and their bigger closing costs, or do you pick Great Bank with their bigger payments and smaller closing costs? Well, it depends on what type of situation you're in. If you don't have a lot of money up front, you can pick Great Bank because Great Bank has less money that you need up front, only $1,500 plus your down payment. Big Bank does give you a smaller payment, but requires much more money up front with a $3,000 closing cost payment. It turns out that you can figure out like a break-even point, that being if you spend 8.5 years, that is the break-even time. So if you want to be in the house more than 8.5 years, you want to go with Big Bank. It'll cost you less money in the long run after 8.5 years. But if you are planning to not stay in the house for very long and find maybe it's a starter home for you and you want to start there and move out in under 8.5 years, you want to go with Great Bank. All right. Let's take a look at example 6, and then I think we are done with this video. All right, let's read. Compare the monthly payments and total loan costs for the mortgage options. Assume that both loans have fixed rates and the same closing costs. So since the closing costs will be the same, we don't even have to worry about anything with that. So we don't have to worry about that being in our conclusion. Now I've gone ahead and done the work outside of the video so I can make this short. The payment here for a 30-year loan with an APR of 3.5% is $718.47. And it turns out if you pay this for 30 years, you will pay a total of $259,786.55. And it should be stated that these calculations are all based on a $100,000 loan amount, like we had above. So you can see then the interest would be $159,786.55. And that's a lot of money to be paying in interest on a loan. For the second option, the 15-year loan at an APR of 2.75%, your payment would be $1,085.79. But this term is much shorter and your interest rate is much smaller. So when you find out how much this would be total, we're not multiplying it by 30 years. We're only going to multiply by 15 to get a total of $195,442.20, which means you would pay a total interest amount of $95,442.20. So the clear benefits of getting a 15-year mortgage at a lower interest rate is that lower interest rate, first of all, but you would save about $65,000 in interest, and you'd have your mortgage paid off in half the time. However, a lot of people pick the 30-year loan because this payment is $370 less per month than this payment. And that offers you some flexibility to make a $100 or $200 per month payment extra if you want, and use the rest of the money for entertainment or diapers if you have kids, or whatever the case may be. So I hope this gave you a pretty good look into how finances work, how you can use them to your advantage, how paying extra money toward your principal is a good idea, all sorts of real life stuff and the math behind it. Good luck.